Edmond Harty, the CEO of Dairymaster and the innovator behind the Moo Monitor, has joined us in studio. Edmond, you launched a new rotary milking parlour down on your stand this morning. Can you just tell us a bit about it?
That's right, Claire. So this morning we launched actually 6 new different rotary milking parlour systems, and I suppose the big difference with this is there's something there for everybody. So we've six ranges in total. So there's the Swift Flow Performance, and really that's an entry range option in rotary milking. Then there's the Swift Flow Optimum, and that's really suited towards family farms. And then there's the Swift Flow Endurance, and then that's really catered for large farms or industrial type farms. And there's a plus option on each of those. And really it's a little bit somebody like buying maybe their first car. So how do you decide that you're buying your first car? Because rotary milking parlour systems, they're highly desirable as herd sizes go up because of efficiency. They typically apply once people cross over about 200 cows. It's an area to start considering at that point. The Swift Flow Optimum then is the mid-range option, and that's a bit like buying a family car. So it has quite a lot of nice features, quite a lot of automation, a lot of things to make life easy. And then the Swift Flow Endurance, that's really probably that's a bit like your high performance car. So it's for heavier use, it has more features, and it's more advanced.
Edmond, at the moment we're seeing huge emphasis on technology and innovation, particularly on the dairy side. What's your view on fully robotic milking systems?
Yeah. So I suppose we look at dairy and we say, well, first of all, our view and our mission is about making dairy farming either more profitable, enjoyable or sustainable. So the question then is, how do we do that? So how can we add to the bottom line? How can we ensure the customer is happy, they have a smile on their face, they like what they're doing, and they're doing the right thing for the future? So the first question then is, well, how do we milk the cows, and what's the most efficient way to milk cows? And if we look at that, there's studies there, and if you look, and by far rotary is by far the most efficient way to milk cows. In fact, there's a study there covering about 340 farms in the UK, and it shows that there's 11 hours less per cow per year if you milk cows with rotary versus other systems that are there. So then the question is of automation. That's really where your question was going. So what level of automation do we see on these milking systems, and where do we think robotics and automation and all these things are carrying things? And our view, first of all, is if we look at, let's say, industry and what's happening there. So it's about being able to expand and to be able to expand gradually. So when we look at rotary milking, that's by far the most efficient. So our view is to automate as much of that as possible and to make life easy for the human. From an R&D point of view, there are developments going on in that area about automatic attachment and things like that, and that stuff you will see happening down the road. And then if we look at other areas of where technology is actually touching, you have areas like the Moo Monitor, because it's about what I mentioned, profitability. So if you're a dairy farmer and you have lots of different levers that you can pull on your farm to change the operation of the farm, fertility is a huge area. It's probably the number one driver of farm profitability and can be optimised in most farms by optimising calving pattern and by ensuring cows calve when they should calve. So we see areas like Moo Monitor. And if you think about a dairy farm and you think about the actual animals on the farm, they're like people in a business. They're actually what's productive. So you want to ensure they're all operating their best. You want to ensure from a health monitoring point of view that each cow, if there's a cow that's sick, you want to know about it. You don't want to find out about it late. So it's a bit like if let's say I walk into a building and there's 100 people inside it, and I have a look around that building. And I say, you know what, I want to know how are they all feeling? And I have a look for 10 minutes. How much do I really know? Not that much. It's a little bit the same with cows. You'll glance over them and you'll see. With Moo Monitor, you have a completely different level of precision. So you have a device monitoring the animals 24/7, looking at their resting, their feeding, their rumination. And basically you have intelligence monitoring this and monitoring their fertility cycle to say, should we breed this cow? Is this cow that we thought was pregnant and there's a case of embryonic loss? Is this a cystic cow that we should treat? Or is this a cow that, she's freshly calved and she's down with metritis or she's a DA or various health things like that? And it'll tell you about all this. And as herd sizes are increasing and time is becoming less, all these tools are different tools that you want in the toolbox of a dairy farmer.
I suppose at the same time there are some concerns of the human element, being lost and all that as well. What is your response to those kind of concerns that machines will be replacing the human element?
No, I don't see machines. I see machines and intelligence actually augmenting what humans do. So even if we think about, agri-land and think about the changes, in having the information on your phone and what that has done, it's the exact same with technology. It's about having information and having it at your fingertips, and that's where we see technology. And then if you look at, we'll say, sensors and sensing, the volume of information is hugely increasing. It's a little bit like, a Twitter feed. It's like a fire hose coming at you. So the question is, how do you deal with a fire hose? And that's really where, these technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and we're very active in these areas and using that in areas like Moo Monitor. But really you have to make it easy to use for the farmer, and that's really what it's about. So while you can be using all these technologies at the back of it, you have to make it easy to use for your customer that allows them to actually operate their farm much better. But as regards the human element, I see it actually making the thing an awful lot more interesting for humans, not less.
And on the back of the Moo Monitor, what can we expect to see next from Dairymaster?
Yeah, so I suppose we have a whole range of stuff in development. I suppose we have a big team in R&D, and I suppose I describe that team. They're a bit like cooks in the kitchen. So they're there, they're developing new things. They're working on different things. But you know what? They don't tell people very much until they have the cake ready to come out of the oven. But we are active in software, electronics, machine learning, AI. Earlier this year, there was a huge announcement actually in that area about some of the types of things that are happening in that area. And in fact, there's a few more things we'll see coming out of the oven and coming out of the R&D department, as we'll see in even the next few months.
You won't say too much there, Edmond.
No, we won't say too much.
And Edmond, just on the manufacturing side, you manufacture a lot of your products on site down in Kerry. Is that sustainable for yourselves, or do you think in the future you may have to outsource some of that manufacturing overseas?
No, I suppose manufacturing is very much core to what we do. It allows us to innovate, it allows us to build better products, and that's what we're all about. How do we build better products? As part of that, in our business, we have to invest in technology. So, you see an awful lot of, let's say, automation, and anybody that visits the Dairymaster factory, they describe it a bit like an engineer's playground. It's a place where there's lots of different things going on, It's been called, Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. It's a bit like that. There's lots of amazing things going on. There's a great team of people. But it's also about saying, how do we do things efficiently? Because from Ireland we're exporting to about 40 different countries around the world. So the question is, how do you be competitive? How do we compete with people that are manufacturing stuff in China, for example, and in low-cost economies? And how we do that is by being efficient in our manufacturing process, and it's actually a big advantage we have in a core competence that we would consider is important for our future.
On the dairy side, dairy farmers have endured a lot of challenges this year due to the weather situations, the prolonged winter and spring, and the drought situation, and also we have Brexit looming, and all this has an impact on milk price. Where do you see milk price going over the next 12 months?
I suppose if you think of a business and if you think of dairy farming, it's probably one of the most complex businesses there is, because there's actually so many variables, there's so many things varying, right? But fundamentally, if you think about it, in all businesses, I would say, your profitability of that business depends on your margin and depends upon the quantity of the item it is you produce. So if we take, let's say, to apply that to a dairy farm, we have a price of milk, we have a cost of production, determines our margin, but now, since establishing of quotas, we can grow the quantity. And what we see is the most resilient dairy farms, they're actually expanding, but they're optimizing their efficiency. So the question is, how do you optimize efficiency? Because you can't set the price for your product, unless there's some very niche scenarios, but generally, you're accepting the price of the product that you're being paid for in the market, and that whole milk price volatility. So the question is, how do you optimize your cost and how do you grow your scale? And they're the two things that we see. The most resilient farms, that's what they're doing.
Thanks very much for joining us, Edmond. We'll leave it there.